I and my husband Ryan have been married for 9 years, together for 11, and we have 2 children. Our relationship has had the usual ups and downs of any marriage, but lately, there's been this recurring issue that's making me question everything. For some context, I recently switched careers from corporate marketing to teaching. The pay cut was significant, but I get more time with our kids, which was becoming increasingly important to me as they're growing up so fast. Meanwhile, Ryan owns a landscaping business that's been doing well, though with the usual seasonal cash flow issues that come with that type of work. 3 years ago, I discovered Ryan was exchanging flirtatious messages with a coworker. Nothing explicitly sexual, but definitely crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed in a marriage. We had a serious conversation about boundaries and what constitutes emotional cheating. He promised it would never happen again, deleted her number, and we moved forward. Since then, there have been a few similar incidents, but nothing I felt was worth ending our marriage over, especially with young kids involved. Last weekend, we were at dinner with some of Ryan's friends when he suddenly got upset with his friend Jake. On the drive home, Ryan went on this long rant about how Jake was disrespecting his relationship by spending time alone with a female colleague while having a girlfriend. He kept saying things like hanging out alone with another woman while in a relationship is automatically crossing a line, and Jake's girlfriend deserves better. I mostly nodded along, thinking it was good that Ryan understood these boundaries so clearly now. Fast forward to that night. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the bathroom and noticed Ryan was still awake. When I walked in, he quickly turned it away, which immediately set off alarm bells. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just checking social media," he said way too quickly, putting his phone face down on the nightstand. Something about his reaction felt off, so after he fell asleep, I checked his phone. He'd been Snapchatting with someone named Amber for over an hour. The conversation history was gone because Snapchat, but the timestamp showed multiple exchanges between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. And this wasn't the first time I'd seen Amber's name in his recent contact. I shook Ryan awake and asked directly who Amber was. He bolted upright, immediately defensive, and asking why I was snooping through his phone. When I pointed out the hypocrisy of him criticizing Jake hours earlier while doing essentially the same thing, he claimed it was completely different because he was just being friendly and nothing inappropriate happened. The argument escalated from there, with Ryan insisting I was overreacting and that I didn't understand guy friendships, even though Amber wasn't a longtime friend, but someone he'd met through an online gaming community a few months ago. The conversation ended with Ryan sleeping in the guest room, claiming I was creating drama over nothing and that he needed space because I was being controlling and paranoid. The next morning, Ryan acted as if nothing had happened. He made breakfast for the kids and suggested we all go to the park, completely ignoring the unresolved tension. I went along with it for the kids' sake, but inside I was seething, and honestly, also feeling a bit crazy for questioning myself. Here's where things get more complicated. While Ryan was in the shower yesterday, I noticed his phone light up with a notification from Amber. I couldn't help myself and looked. There were several messages from the past few days, including one where she sent him a selfie with the caption, "Missing our late-night chats." Nothing explicitly sexual, but definitely flirtatious and definitely crossing the boundaries we had agreed upon after the last incident. When I confronted Ryan about it, he got defensive again, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill and that guys and girls can be just friends. I reminded him that he had literally just condemned Jake for the exact same behavior, and his response was that it was a completely different situation without explaining how. The thing that's driving me crazy is the double standard. He holds Jake to this high standard of relationship respect, but doesn't apply the same rules to himself. When I pointed this out, he accused me of trying to start drama and being insecure. I honestly don't know what to do at this point. We have a mortgage together, 2 young kids, and with my teacher's salary, I couldn't afford to maintain our current lifestyle on my own. Plus, the kids adore their dad, and he is a good father despite his boundary issues with other women. My sister thinks Ryan is gaslighting me, and that his behavior constitutes emotional cheating. She says I should give him an ultimatum, either complete transparency with his phone and no more late-night chats with other women, or we need to seriously reconsider our marriage. But I'm worried an ultimatum will just make him better at hiding things rather than actually changing his behavior. The hypocrisy is what hurts the most. How can he stand there and lecture Jake about respecting relationship boundaries when he's doing the exact same thing and possibly worse? And when I try to have a calm conversation about it, he immediately makes me feel like I'm crazy for even being concerned. I've tried explaining to him that it's not about whether anything physical happened, but about the deception and the double standard. If he's willing to lecture his friends about appropriate behavior but can't apply those same standards to himself, what does that say about his character? And if he truly believes nothing is wrong with his behavior, why is he being so secretive and defensive about it? Last night I overheard him on the phone with Jake, and he was actually defending his actions, saying I was blowing things out of proportion and that women just don't understand guy friendships. The irony of him saying this to Jake, the very friend he had just criticized for similar behavior, was apparently lost on him. I'm at my wit's end here. Part of me wonders if I am overreacting, but another part knows this pattern of behavior isn't healthy. The constant gaslighting and making me feel crazy for having reasonable concerns is taking a toll on my mental health. I'll try to respond to comments, but might be slow since I've got a full day of teaching ahead and then the usual parenting chaos after school. Am I being unreasonable here? Is there a way to make Ryan understand the hypocrisy of his behavior without it turning into another argument where I'm somehow the villain? Thanks in advance for any advice or perspective. Now for the first update. Holy crap. I wasn't expecting my post about my husband's Snapchat double standards to explode. Rip my inbox. Thank you all for the support and advice. I've been reading every comment while trying to figure out my next steps. It's been about a week since my original post, and I've taken some time to really think about my options while Ryan has been acting like nothing significant happened. He's been referring to our argument as that silly fight about Snapchat whenever it comes up, which makes my blood boil, but I've been keeping my cool. Several of you mentioned looking into our financial situation, so I did some research and discovered our house has about $175,000 in equity. That sounds great on paper, but refinancing or selling would be complicated because of Ryan's inconsistent income documentation from being self-employed, plus my recent career change doesn't look great to lenders either. Not the most encouraging news. To make things more complicated, I had a parent-teacher conference for our 6-year-old son this week. His teacher explained he's been struggling with attention issues that will require additional support and consistency at home. The timing is unfortunate, but it's just one more factor I have to consider when thinking about our future. And many of you pointed out that kids can sense tension between parents, which I'm definitely seeing. Last night, after the kids were finally asleep, I decided it was time for another serious conversation. I sat Ryan down in the living room and explained that his dismissal of my feelings and boundary violations were seriously threatening our marriage. I tried to use some of the language many of you suggested about focusing on his behavior rather than attacking him personally. Thanks for that advice. It was helpful. Ryan initially scoffed at the conversation, rolling his eyes and saying, "Here we go again with the Snapchat drama," before settling into the couch with his arms crossed defensively. I could tell things were getting worse, but I pushed forward anyway. I was mid-sentence explaining how his double standards were eroding my trust when his phone lit up on the coffee table with a notification from Amber, with a heart emoji clearly visible in the preview. The timing was perfect. Ryan quickly flipped the phone over, but it was too late. I saw it, he knew I saw it, and the conversation immediately shifted. "Who was that?" I asked, even though we both knew. Ryan sighed and admitted he'd been talking to Amber throughout the week because she was going through a tough time and needed someone to talk to. I pointed out that this was exactly the type of behavior he had condemned in Jake and asked how he would feel if I was secretly messaging male friends at 1 a.m. and hiding it from him. His face turned red as he struggled to explain the contradiction. Then he actually said, and I'm quoting exactly here, that it was different because men and women can't be just friends, but women and men can. Think about that logic for a moment. Several commenters predicted he'd say something nonsensical like this, and you were spot on. When I pressed him on this absurd logic, Ryan completely changed tactics and brought up our financial situation, saying, "You can't afford to leave anyway. Not with your teacher's salary and the kids." The comment affected me significantly. It suddenly became clear that Ryan viewed our financial entanglement as leverage rather than a partnership. Many of you warned me he might use this as a control tactic, and you were unfortunately right. That's when something changed for me. I felt calm, and I told Ryan very directly that I was serious about reconsidering our marriage and would be speaking with a financial advisor to understand my options. You should have seen his face. Genuine alarm for the first time in our conversation. His demeanor completely shifted from dismissive to panicked in an instant. Suddenly, he was saying he would completely cut contact with Amber, suggesting marriage counseling, the first constructive suggestion he'd made, and promising things would be different. It was clear he realized the usual tactics weren't working. The conversation ended with Ryan promising to respect my boundaries going forward, but I remained skeptical given his pattern of broken promises. The next day, while Ryan was at work, I contacted a financial advisor a friend recommended. The meeting provided new insights, and thanks to those who suggested this in the comments, it was invaluable advice. While our financial situation is complicated, there are definitely options that would allow me financial independence if we separated. The advisor helped me understand what steps I'd need to take to protect myself and the kids financially if things don't improve. I've been researching what a separation might look like, documenting everything, and making copies of important financial records, as many of you suggested. I'm not making any hasty decisions, but I'm also not going to remain in a marriage that limits my financial options with someone who doesn't respect me. Ryan has been on his absolute best behavior since our talk, leaving his phone unlocked on the counter, coming home early from work, and being extra attentive to the kids. He even showed me that he deleted Snapchat from his phone, though as someone pointed out in my original post, apps can be easily reinstalled. To answer some common questions from the comments. 1. No, we haven't started marriage counseling yet, but I've found a few therapists covered by our insurance who specialize in marital issues. 2. I haven't contacted Jake's girlfriend about any of this, though many suggested I should. 3. Yes, I've been documenting everything, including screenshots and dates of conversations. 4. The kids don't know anything is wrong as we've kept our discussions private. 5. I have told my sister everything, so I have emotional support and a witness to the situation. The hardest part of all this has been maintaining my composure around the kids while dealing with these emotional challenges. My 6-year-old asked why I looked sad the other day, and I almost broke down right there. Being a teacher and a mom means I'm constantly taking care of others, but I'm trying to remember to take care of myself too, something many of you reminded me to do. Ryan's mom called me yesterday unexpectedly, saying that every marriage has rough patches and that I shouldn't throw away a family over some messages. So it's clear Ryan has been talking to his family about our issues, but likely minimizing his behavior, which doesn't surprise me at all. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I feel more clear-headed and empowered than I did a week ago. Having a financial plan and understanding my options has removed a lot of the fear and uncertainty. I'm giving Ryan the opportunity to demonstrate real change, but I'm also preparing myself for the possibility that this is just another temporary adjustment to avoid consequences. I'll try to update again when there are significant developments. Thank you all again for the supportive comments and practical advice. It truly helped me find clarity in a really confusing and painful situation. Special thanks to those who shared similar experiences. It helped me feel less alone and gave me the courage to advocate for myself. Now for the second update. Update 2. Well, some of you predicted exactly what would happen with Ryan's changed behavior, and I'm still processing how right you were. I'm back with another update because I need to get this off my chest, and honestly, this community has been more supportive than most people in my real life. Link to original post and first update for anyone who missed it, though the first update got temporarily locked for some reason before being restored. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post. Ryan has been on his best behavior since our confrontation. He even made a show of deleting Snapchat from his phone right in front of me, though as many of you pointed out in the comments, apps can be easily reinstalled, so I wasn't exactly impressed by this gesture. The meeting with the financial advisor was really helpful. Thank you to everyone who suggested this. While our situation is complicated with Ryan's self-employment and my career change, she explained that there are options that would allow me financial independence if we separated. She outlined how a home equity loan could provide transitional funds while we figure out a longer-term solution. This knowledge has given me peace of mind. The financial trap Ryan tried to use against me isn't as inescapable as he made it seem. Things at home have been tense despite Ryan's performance of perfect husband. My youngest has asked me yesterday if Daddy is going to leave like Emily's daddy did. Emily is a kid in his class whose parents divorced last year, Trying to maintain normalcy for the kids while contemplating blowing up our entire life has been exhausting. I'm constantly second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm overreacting or if I should try harder to make things work for their sake. The mom guilt is real, folks. Then yesterday, Ryan's mom called out of nowhere. She started with small talk about the kids, but quickly pivoted to telling me that every marriage has rough patches, and that I shouldn't throw away a family over some innocent friendship. Apparently, Ryan had been crying to mommy about our rough patch, but minimized the whole double standard and blatant lying part. I kept the conversation brief and non-committal, but inside, I was fuming. Of course, he went running to his mother with a sanitized version of events where I'm the unreasonable one. Classic Ryan move. But here's where things took a serious turn. Last night, I was working late on lesson plans for my class, while Ryan took the kids to their after-school activities. His laptop was on the kitchen table, and suddenly chimed with a notification that had synced from his phone. I normally wouldn't look. Maybe that's not entirely true after everything that's happened. But the preview caught my eye. A message from Jake asking if Operation Damage Control was working. I clicked on the message thread, and what I found made me ill. Ryan had been seeking advice from Jake about how to appease me without actually changing his behavior long-term. The messages revealed Ryan had been using an old phone to continue communicating with Amber and several other women. He described his strategy as lying low until this blows over. I know some of you will say I shouldn't have looked at his messages, but at this point, I don't care. My intuition was spot on. What hurt the most was reading Ryan telling Jake that I was financially trapped and would get over it eventually because I can't afford to leave with the kids on a teacher's salary. They were laughing about how I had no choice but to accept his behavior. I sat there, taking photos of all these messages as evidence, trying to process that the man I married could be so manipulative. When Ryan returned home with the kids, he knew something was wrong from my expression. I waited until the kids were occupied in the living room before confronting him. "You spoke to Jake about Operation Damage Control?" I asked quietly. The color drained from his face, and his eyes looked toward his laptop, which I had closed after gathering my evidence. He stumbled through an explanation, claiming it was just guy talk, and that Jake had misunderstood the situation, but his excuses fell apart as I revealed exactly what I had discovered. As our voices started to rise, our 6-year-old appeared in the doorway looking frightened. We both stopped, and Ryan suggested we talk about this later. I agreed, not wanting to traumatize our child any further. The look on my son's face is something I'll never forget. Children absorb more than we think they do. After getting the kids to bed, Ryan tried a new approach. He broke down crying and claimed he had a problem with seeking validation from women and needed help, not abandonment. He said he was afraid of losing me and would do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it took, to save our marriage. Edit. Rip my inbox. Many of you have shared similar stories about partners who suddenly realize they have a problem only when caught red-handed. The consensus seems to be this is another manipulation tactic, and I'm inclined to agree based on everything else I've discovered. I listened to his confession with emotional detachment. After seeing his messages with Jake, I recognized this as potentially just another performance. The timing was too convenient. Suddenly he has a problem requiring my support, rather than a character flaw requiring accountability. Several of you warned me about the tearful confession phase, and you were spot on. That night, after Ryan fell asleep, I made a decision. I contacted a lawyer recommended by my financial advisor and scheduled a consultation for the following day. I'm not rushing into anything, but I need to understand my options and proceed carefully but decisively. I've also started documenting everything, taking screenshots, noting dates and times of conversations, and saving important financial documents to a secure cloud account that only I can access. Thank you to everyone who emphasized the importance of documentation. You were right. I've also reached out to my sister, who lives about an hour away. She's coming to stay with us for a few days for emotional support and as a witness to interactions that might later be disputed. Ryan doesn't know about the lawyer consultation yet, and I'm not planning to tell him until I have a clear understanding of my legal and financial position. The hardest part of all this is maintaining normalcy for the kids. I'm still getting them ready for school each morning, helping with homework, and trying to smile through bedtime stories while my internal world is imploding. My 6-year-old asked why I looked sad the other day, and I almost lost it right there. How do you explain to a child that their father has been lying to and manipulating their mother? You don't, but it's hard keeping this all inside. I know this post is getting long, sorry, but writing it all out helps me process. The clarity I feel now is both empowering and terrifying. I realize that what I'm dealing with isn't just about Snapchat or Amber or even the other women. It's about a lack of respect and a pattern of deception that I can no longer ignore or excuse. The man I married doesn't exist anymore, and I need to make decisions based on who he actually is, not who I wanted him to be. I know the road ahead won't be easy, especially with 2 young children involved, but staying in this marriage as it is would be teaching them wrong lessons about relationships and self-worth. I have my consultation with the lawyer tomorrow morning while the kids are at school. I'll update again when I have more information about my next steps. Thank you all for your support and advice. It's meant more than you know, especially as I've been feeling so isolated in my real life. The next steps with Ryan and our marriage are unclear, but I'm stronger now than when I first posted here, and I have all of you to thank for that. Now for the final update. Final update on the Snapchat husband situation. Wow, I can't believe I'm actually writing this. To everyone who's followed this saga and offered advice, thank you from the bottom of my heart, especially those who told me to gather evidence and talk to a financial advisor. The week after my lawyer consultation was honestly a blur. I was securing copies of all our important financial documents and opening a separate bank account. Our tax return arrived with perfect timing, and I deposited my portion into my new account. The financial advisor suggested this as an emergency fund. Ryan definitely noticed I was being secretive, but seemed to assume I was just processing our fight and giving me space, which really meant avoiding actual accountability. My sister arrived a few days after my last post and has been staying with us since. Having her there gave me both emotional support and an objective witness to everything happening, which turned out to be crucial. The kids were thrilled to have their aunt around, which provided some much-needed normalcy during this chaos. Ryan spent the week cycling through various manipulation tactics. One minute he'd be tearfully apologizing and promising therapy. The next he'd be coldly telling me I was destroying our family over nothing. He also kept minimizing everything to friends and family, making me out to be the unreasonable one who couldn't get over his innocent friendships. Yesterday evening changed everything. Ryan came home from work, slamming doors and muttering under his breath as he made his way to the kitchen where my sister and I were preparing dinner. The kids were watching a movie in the living room. Thank goodness for Disney Plus during tense parenting moments. Without even a hello, Ryan announced that Jake's girlfriend had found out about everything and broken up with him. He was convinced I must have told her somehow, and now Jake's life is ruined because of me. His tone was accusatory. This was all my fault. I kept my voice calm as I told him I hadn't spoken to Jake's girlfriend, but apparently she wasn't the only one with relationship boundaries and expectations of honesty. The look on Ryan's face was something I'll never forget. Pure anger. He stepped closer to me, pointing his finger inches from my face. She immediately stepped between us, telling Ryan to back up and lower his voice because the kids were in the next room. He was over me and felt threatening, and seeing my sister call him out seemed to make him suddenly aware of how he looked. With my sister standing beside me, I felt brave enough to do what needed to be done. I handed Ryan the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared earlier that week. The shock on his face quickly turned to disbelief and then laughter. He actually laughed and said I couldn't afford to leave him, that my teacher's salary wouldn't even cover our mortgage. That's when my sister jumped in and informed him that I'd been approved for a home equity loan to cover transition costs, and the house would be sold as part of the settlement. The lawyer had it all worked out already. I wish I could have photographed the exact moment Ryan realized he no longer had financial control over me. I couldn't help adding that Jake's girlfriend had actually contacted me directly after seeing Jake's texts about Operation Damage Control. She made her own decision based on his behavior, just like I was doing. This was the final blow. Jake's girlfriend had indeed reached out through Facebook after seeing the messages on Jake's laptop. We had a long conversation where we realized how similarly we'd been manipulated. Turns out Ryan wasn't the only one minimizing inappropriate relationships. Ryan grabbed his keys and stormed out, saying he was going to his mother's. The kids heard the door slam and came running in with worried faces. I assured them everything was fine, that Daddy just needed some time to cool off. Explaining divorce to children is a whole separate post I'm not emotionally ready to write yet. That night, I received many texts and calls from Ryan. His messages ranged from begging for another chance to accusing me of planning this all along. I documented everything, but only responded about the kids and logistics. This morning, I met with my principal to explain my situation. I was worried about requesting time off for upcoming legal appointments so early in my teaching career, but her support was unexpected and overwhelming. Not only did she offer flexible scheduling, but she also connected me with the school's family counseling resources for the kids. Apparently, our district offers free sessions for families in transition, information I desperately needed. The past 24 hours have been surreal. I keep having moments where I can't believe this is actually happening, followed by moments of absolute certainty that I'm doing the right thing. My sister has been helping me make plans for the immediate future. We're looking at apartments near the kids' school that would fit my budget once the house sells. Ryan's mom called this afternoon, of course she did, to tell me I was making a terrible mistake and that every marriage has rough patches. I politely told her I appreciated her concern, but that my decision was final. When she started to argue, I simply said I needed to help the kids with homework and ended the call. Setting boundaries with her feels like practice for setting them with Ryan. For those wondering about Jake's girlfriend, many of you mentioned her in comments. We've actually been texting regularly since our initial conversation. There's something uniquely bonding about discovering you've been manipulated by men who are best friends. She's doing okay and has already blocked Jake on everything. We might meet for coffee next week, which feels like the start of a weird but necessary friendship. The hardest part has been maintaining normalcy for the kids. My 6-year-old asked why Daddy wasn't sleeping at home last night, and I had to give an age-appropriate explanation about grown-ups sometimes needing space to figure things out. He seemed to accept this, but I know harder conversations are coming. Parenting through divorce is territory I never wanted to navigate. Ryan returned briefly this morning to collect some clothes while the kids were at school. He was subdued and kept asking if I was really going through with this. When I confirmed I was, he tried one last attempt to make me feel guilty about how this would affect the kids. I simply reminded him that his actions and choices led us here, not mine. Something many of you emphasized in comments, that I wasn't breaking up our family, he already had. Edit. Several people have asked about my mental health through all this. I'm definitely planning to start therapy once things settle down a bit. Probably should have done this years ago, honestly. My sister recommended her therapist who specializes in narcissistic relationship recovery, and I've already reached out to schedule an initial consultation. I'm also looking into support groups for single parents. If anyone has experience with these, I'd appreciate recommendations. Looking forward, I know things won't be easy, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm making choices based on what's best for me and my children, rather than just reacting to Ryan's manipulation. The financial piece will be challenging but manageable, and the emotional freedom already feels worth it. I'm cautiously optimistic about building a new life where respect and honesty are non-negotiable. I don't plan on posting any more updates about this situation, but know that all your advice and support helped me find strength I didn't know I had. To anyone in a similar situation, trust your gut, document everything, and remember that financial entanglement is not the same as being trapped.